Arguably two of the most forgiving driver releases of 2025. We've got the Ping G440 Max and the Taylormade Qi35 Max. But which one is going to perform best? If you've tuned in before, you'll already know we're one of the most data-driven, open, honest, unbiased testers on YouTube, and today will be no different. We're going to be showing you guys multiple shots with each of these heads, examples that compare to each other, good hits, bad hits, really diving into the data, and again, as always, showing you how these heads perform, not just telling you. But if you haven't tuned in before, then you're in for a treat. Welcome along. My name is Ross, and almost 4 years ago, I started EP Golf Studios, and I did it to offer a truly unbiased, open, honest, in-depth custom fit service that people can really trust. Let's be frank, I really dislike the amount of BS that's out there surrounding the golf industry nowadays, especially when it comes to golf equipment. Because yes, I own and operate EP, it's my business, but first and foremost, I'm a passionate golfer, and I started this business just to help everyday average golf consumers such as yourself understand more, learn more, basically not get ripped off. And that's exactly why we started this YouTube channel as well. The marketing nonsense out there doesn't help. The differing opinions out there do not help. We wanted to give you guys somewhere you could come and watch honest, open, independent, data-driven tests that you can trust. As always, we're giving you two lots of data. First of all, Tom hitting at a slightly slower swing speed, and then later I do my hitting at a slightly faster swing speed. So you're going to get two lots of data, and you're going to get two honest opinions of how these heads really stack up against each other. So let's jump into the hitting and the testing to show you guys how these heads really do compare. If you enjoy what we do and you love our content, please do consider subscribing. We're trying to grow, and we would really appreciate your support. Not too bad. Yeah. Necky?
Bit heely, that one.
Yep. 240 down the middle for a heely one. Nice. It's better.
Yeah, that was a pretty good drive, I think.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I mean, it's perfect place for you to hit it, really, isn't it? Especially with these sort of drivers that might spit a fraction too much for you. Catch it a little bit high in that toe. Great launch at 15.6, nice and high launch. Spin at 2.3, really good. Decent efficiency at 1.43, 264, 13 offline. That is a great drive. Got very first reaction to hitting the G440, feel and sound?
Yeah, it's nice. It's quite a nice sound. Feels almost a bit crunchy on the face, which I quite like.
We will do a 440 versus 430, but from back here, it sounds quite high pitch again.
Yes, yeah, you can definitely tell it's a ping. You know, it's got that ping sound, nice and loud. Makes you, feel like you've hit the ball hard because you've got that nice loud acoustic.
Sure, the 430 was a bit duller sounding. Sure, it was. That to my ear, again, we'll have to do a head-to-head comparison. That to my ear sounds a bit higher pitch. Right.
Interesting, yeah. I think you have to hear them side by side, but yeah, no, it feels nice initially. It feels nice. I mean, it's my first decent drive out of about 50 shots, so I'll give you some more intel as and when I build a bit more insight. Ooh, hang on. It tried.
Is that not a bad strike, just face a bit open?
Yeah, just open face. I think strike was actually pretty good.
Yeah, strike, best strike yet. We say face 3 degrees open. To be fair, it's done all right for that. 19 yards offline. Most holes are going to be okay. Maybe right rough at the worst. Spin comes up to 3-1, but not a bad result. Just held it down the left, but sounded pretty solid.
Yeah, it's another heely one, but it's done well again.
It's quite hard to tell, to be honest, with that head. I find that the pitch seems very similar. If it's low or high, I'm normally pretty good at picking up on it, but I'm struggling with that head. Yeah, face is a little close, so I mean that started quite far left because of that heel strike. 33 yards left. Yeah, that's borderline, that one. How'd that one feel?
Felt more toe side. Tried not to heel it.
That probably means middle for you.
But it did feel better, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad strike. Not quite middle, but better. 7 mil high, virtually in the center. 2.6 spin. Again, even this at 9 degrees. I mean, I know this is the max, not the LST, but it's seeming like a pretty spinny head, isn't it? It'd be interesting to see how the Qi stacks up against this, because for you, this is certainly not low spin at all, is it? Like,
No, not at all.
Only seen one in a reasonable level, and that was 2-3, which is that one which we hit slightly high in the toe and squared off the face, but the rest have been pretty high spin. That sounded all right.
Yeah, another high, slightly heel side.
So that's basically your middle, really, isn't it? Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, it is.
Pretty much bang on there. I mean, again, it's within that sort of centre zone, really, I would call it. Fractionally high heel, 2.7 spin, 253. Yeah, I mean, we've had a few kind of not too dissimilar to that, ending up 255, 250. That one sounded all right, mate.
Yeah, that was more middle. It's just, I was quite surprised how high that actually launched and stayed up. Yeah, it's a spin, isn't it? Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, 3-1.
Yeah, that was a good strike.
Definitely,
as well.
just it's a too much of a high spinning head for you, for sure. Even at 9 degrees, because that's bang out the middle. It's only finished 8 yards offline, which is great. Not a bad delivery from you there. Face maybe a tiny bit more open than you would want it to be if you were being really kind of critical. And yeah, 3-2 backspin. It's gonna be really interesting to see if how these heads compare in spin, isn't it?
Yeah, I certainly didn't think that one would spin up as much as that did, actually. So that's interesting.
That sounded good.
Yeah, a little heely again.
Fractionally more high in heel than we had a couple with the G440, isn't it? But very comparable to 4 spin. That's quite interesting. Nice. Get a little high.
Yeah, a little high. It's doing really well.
Instantly looks lower spin. Yeah, not too dissimilar. A little bit high, slightly in that heel. 2-2 spin. 261, 9 yards. I mean, that's a really, really good result, isn't it? I mean, great little fade delivery from you there. Only ended up 9 yards offline. Fractionally high. Reasonably good efficiency, that actually, for a quite high strike, especially considering that was in high heel. Not an efficient part of the head. 141, that's actually really good. 260. That's actually a very good result for what you gave it there. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely instantly getting a really big jump on the ping with this, aren't we? And it's purely based around that spin coming down. Again, 2-2. Much better spin. Again, a high strike, but great if it, the 142 efficiency from that high strike. That's really solid. High is not an efficient part of the head. That's very good. Again, 2-2 spin, 262, 7 off. That's, those first 3 shots have actually surprised me quite a lot compared to the ping.
Yeah, they just seem to want to go more forward, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that was slightly more central, but I wouldn't say I'm striking it in a hugely different place. And
no,
it just wants to go forward, whereas the ping kind of just wanted to go up a bit.
It just seems like lower spin. I mean, it'd be interesting to just have a look at the dynamic loft. I mean, those first 3, 16, 17, 16 and a half dynamic loft-wise. So just from those 3 shots, we're seeing a dynamic loft of 16.5 compared to on average, we had a 20-degree dynamic loft with the 440 Max. I mean, that's massively different. This will be interesting to see. That's a bit, was that a bit high on the face?
Yeah, it was a good strike, I think.
Was it?
Bit high, but quite central.
So it's a little high and a little leaky. That's still done really well. A little high, but not bad. Again, 2-4 spin. Again, tiny high.
Yeah, but good. Slightly high, slightly toe, maybe.
I mean, one thing that is very noticeable with this is that is a much better strike pattern with this than it was with the ping. Like, yes, the ping was consistent, but it was consistent heel/high heel, which is not great for you at all. High center is absolutely where you want to be living. Because again, that seems very good at the top of the head in terms of from an efficiency perspective. I mean, again, I've done thousands and thousands and thousands of fittings, and that efficiency is actually surprising me at how good that efficiency is coming out the top of the head. 15 launch, 2-2 backspin. It's really, really good. Good swing. How'd the strike feel?
Strike felt really good on that one, yeah.
Bang out in the middle, that one was pretty much, wasn't it? I mean, well, 3 mil high, but it's the closest we've had to bang out in the middle with the Qi35. 14 launch, 2.7 backspin. Because actually, I mean, we had a very centered one with the G440, didn't we? There was probably not dissimilar to that. I think the centered one finished 8 yards right with the 440, to be fair, if I remember rightly. Yeah, it was this. This was the one with the 440. So yeah, 8 yards right. But again, very, very good strike. Face 1.9 open, and that span at 3.1, ending up at 2.48 total distance. That one we just hit there. Not dissimilar, 1.3 open, not massively dissimilar. Very, very comparable strike, ending up 2.49, 4 yards offline. So, I mean, it definitely does spin lower, but actually on that one, strike for strike delivery, fairly comparable. Will that end up 1 yard different? Well, maybe it's not as different as we first thought, but it'd be interesting to see the averages in a minute. What would be your summary of hitting the G440 and the Qi35 back to back? Feel wise, kind of, did you feel better with one or the other? Did one feel, what did you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed both. It felt like Ping had that really kind of solid Ping feeling. So quite a meaty strike, quite a solid feel. But I think that I moved the Qi35 better. I think it just suited me a bit better. I was finding strike at points. I didn't really find strike a lot today. But at points, I felt like I was finding strike a little bit easier with the Qi35. And I think that slightly lower spin profile helped me see the ball when I was misstriking at Healy, which is my miss. It wasn't flaring up and spinning. It was going a bit more forward.
Yeah.
And I build a bit of confidence when I start to see them go a bit more forward and less sort of like high spinny.
Yeah.
And then I can sort of feel like I can start to maybe work from there. So
you felt a bit more confident with the Qi35.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I will say I prefer the look of the Ping.
Yeah.
But I'd say Taylormade probably wins it on feel, and in this test, in this limited number of shots, certainly on performance as well.
Probably hit over 20 with both, to be fair. Yeah, I would probably agree with that assessment, though. I think, I mean, if we do look at the average sort of numbers, I did think it was 300 revs lower spinish, and it's exactly proven that pretty much on average, or 250. So 250, 300 revs lower spin, but that really is equated to, I mean, 2 yards a carry, 5 yards a total. The ball flight was fractionally lower with the Qi35, obviously because we had a degree lower launch and 300 revs lower spin. That equated to a peak height that was 10 feet lower and a descent angle that was 2.5 degrees shallower. So you would get a little bit more rollout with the Ping, with the Taylormade, because of that slightly lower launch and lower spin. But apart from that, there's not that much in them really, is there? Like you say, at times we were finding strike a bit easier with Qi35, but that's going to be very subjective player to player. Didn't find one more right or left bias per se, would you know?
Not really, no. And I think maybe because I did have that patch where I was striking it, maybe I would say slightly better with the Taylormade. They did seem to want to hold their line a little bit more.
Yeah. Interestingly, I actually think we got more efficiency out of the Qi35. I mean, on average, it does show that we got 1.41 versus 1.4. But if you look at the average strike, okay, they were both high heel, so not dissimilar, but it was fractionally higher with the Qi35, which you would see that be lower efficiency. So the fact that we struck the Qi35 higher in the head, but we got more efficiency, that is quite impressive, to be honest. Because if that would have been lower, we would have got even more out of it. The rest of your delivery, I mean, look at the attack, 3.3, 2.9, path 3 to 3, face 1.8 to 1.5. Like really, really, like very comparable deliveries there. Very fair test. And even a very comparable strike, even though it was fractionally higher with the Qi35. Swing speed was with less than half a mile an hour in it. We did see 3 degrees less dynamic loft, which is obviously where that lower launch and lower spin is going to be coming from. And we did instantly, with the testing early, we saw lower dynamic loft. Like straight away, we were like, yeah, that's like 3 degrees lower dynamic loft.
Yes, yeah, it's good. And like I said, if I was in a fit and I was looking at these two results, I would definitely be suggesting the Taylormade. It did, even though it's not huge in the numbers, it did feel like it was just going a bit more forward, and it was protecting me against that high floaty right, which I don't want to see on the course. I really don't want to see that. So So yeah, no, so it's good. It's I guess it's a point for Taylormade if we're rewarding points. So it's good.
But again, it's dependent. It's very player dependent, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Because
Yeah.
for you need it a little bit lower launch, a little bit lower spin's good for you.
Yes.
But for that player that maybe needed a little bit more launch and a bit more spin, then the ping's going to be better. This is where like it's so like they're like, what's the best driver? It's like, I don't know, what's the best for you? What do you need? That's the best driver for you. Right, so let's take you through my data and my experience of hitting these drivers. I probably spent a good hour and a half hitting these back to back, jumping from one to another, just to really get a good comparison, good idea of how they perform against each other. Before we jump into my average numbers, I just want to run you through 2 shots with each that are very comparable delivery strikes, just to give you an idea of how they perform when hit reasonably similarly. First of all, a slight mishit, so I'll bring the data up on the screen so you guys can see and compare. First of all, strike, which you'll see bottom right of the graphic on your screen, with the G440, 10mm low, 6mm toe, with the Qi35, 11mm low, 4mm toe. So very, very comparable strike. Swing speed was both 111. Delivery characteristics, like both 3 into out, or 2.5 into out, 3 into out, very comparable. Face 0.2 open, 0.5 open, very, very comparable. Carry, 271 with the 440, 270 with the Qi35. So virtually the same. We did get a fraction more efficiency out of the Qi35, so a touch more ball speed. Again, take from that what you will. Another thing to note is that launch. From a low strike, the 440 launched really, really well, increasing that launch to 14, and backspin with both around 29. So similar backspin, 440 doing a great job of that launch with slightly less efficiency, but overall getting basically an identical result. And shot 2, this is basically the best result I had with each driver throughout the entire session. So basically the most distance with it still being relatively online. Again, I'll bring up the graphics for you. Both again a little bit low in that toe. That is pretty much my strike if I'm honest. So the Ping 7mm low, 10mm toe. The Taylormade 4mm low, 9mm toe. So maybe fractionally worse with the 440, but fairly comparable. Speed, we did swing the Qi35 fractionally faster at 113 compared to 112.3 with the Ping, and I think we'll see on average in a minute, there wasn't a drastic difference on average with the swing speed, but from time to time, I could creep that little bit more out of the Qi35. So that led to a little bit more ball speed with the 35 as well, 163.3 compared to 161.5 with the Ping. End result, 286 carry with both on the nose. So the previous example, 1 yard in it. This example, 0 yards in it. Very close. Okay, so my overall average performance numbers. Now there are some really interesting comparisons to draw here from what I found on average to what Tom found on average. Some things that were common and some things that were completely different. Now I'm going to take you through both and I'm going to try and explain why I believe they were different. First of all, I'm going to bring up the club delivery page just to show you what I found on average. Club speed was virtually the same. I mean, I got a fraction more out of the Qi35 on average, but really like there was nothing in it. The angle of attack both was around 5 up, again 0.3 of a difference in it on average. Path, again both around 3 into out, again 0.3 of a difference in it on average. Face was a degree more closed on average with the Ping. But I don't think that it was any more left biased in my opinion. I missed a few left with both. But on average, I cannot say I believe one of these clubs is more left biased than the other. I believe they both have a slight left tendency to them for me, but one not necessarily more so than the other. Now, 2 common factors in the club delivery data that me and Tom both saw. Number 1, a little bit more efficiency coming from the Qi35, so potentially getting a little bit more ball speed, a little bit more pop out of that head. And the really interesting one, that dynamic loft. Tom saw about 3 degrees and I saw about 3 degrees, which is a big difference considering both 9 degree, both kind of supposedly max heads with CG low far back. Both Tom was using the same shaft and I used the same shaft in both heads, so no difference there. Both saw 3 degrees left dynamic loft, which does go to show, regardless of them being 9 degree and a similar kind of max style head, the actual characteristics of how they play dynamically are very different. The CG of the head and the design of the head will be slightly different. It's the only way you'll lead to getting such a big dynamic difference like that. So what did that equate to in terms of actual ball flight and performance? Well, this is where it gets quite interesting and you'll see why as we go through. Ball speed, fraction more from the Qi35, but less than a mile an hour in it. So not loads, but a little bit. I did find that the Qi35 Max launched lower, so did Tom. So for me, 12.9 launch with the Qi35 compared to 13.7 launch with the 440. Again, 440 doing a fantastic job there. For me, I struck it slightly lower in the head with a face that's slightly closed on average, and it still launched higher, which is great. Even more impressively, it also, for me, span lower. So I found Qi35 on average span at 2637, Ping 2488. So again, it launched higher and span lower from on average a lower strike and on average a slightly more closed face. Both of those things should basically do the opposite. But it just goes to show that Ping was doing a phenomenal job from where I was striking it, which I think is a big factor here. On average, that basically meant 2 yards of carry difference. 277 with the Qi35 to 279 with the Ping. The dispersion on average did show a fraction more left bias with the 440. Again, links back to what we saw in the club delivery data where the face was a little bit more closed on average, obviously leading to me turning a couple more over. Again, I'm not sure how much you can really take from that, if I'm being honest. You would obviously have to go and test for yourself. I don't really think it's much more left biased. Ball flight actually ended up being very similar, despite the launch and spin characteristics being slightly different. So obviously the Ping did launch a little bit higher, but then kind of flattened out a little bit because it was spinning slightly less, whereas the Qi35 launched a little bit lower, but obviously kind of climbed a little bit more because it was spinning a little bit higher. So the peak height and angle of descent really ended up being fairly comparable. Now these numbers are very interesting because obviously what I found was quite different to what Tom found. So I found consistently the Ping was spinning lower for me, and Tom consistently found the Ping spinning higher for him. Now I think that's heavily linked to delivery characteristics and average strike characteristics. I don't really think it's linked to speed. I know I was swinging a little bit faster than Tom, but I don't really think it's linked to that. But if we analyze the delivery and the strike, we're virtually the polar opposite. Tom doesn't quite hit up as much as me. He swings out to in, typically a bit of an open face, and strikes it high heel. I'm the polar opposite. I hit up a bit more. I hit from the inside consistently. I hit with a closed face, and I consistently hit it low toe. So virtually the polar opposite of Tom. Now, I'm not a golf club engineer or a scientist, but here is what I would believe on why we found differing results. Main point would be strike. So that would lead me to believe that the Ping has probably got a CD that's a little bit lower and potentially a little bit further back, and the Qi35 Max potentially got a CG a little bit further forward and a little bit higher in the face, which would also link back to the dynamic loft. Typically, if a head has a CG further forward, it delivers slightly less dynamic loft. Whereas if we have a CG further back, typically it delivers more dynamic loft. When it links to the strike, for me, we know that Pings do an amazing job low in the face, like they have for a few generations now. The 430 really, really impressed me when I hit it low. It like barely just didn't spin, I just retained the spin. Obviously, they say spin consistency, but it did a fantastic job retaining ball speed and spin low in the face. Again, that would lead me to believe potentially CG is lower in the head. So when we strike it lower in the head, what happens is the face downward deflects, right? Which reduces launch, increases spin. Whereas if we move that CG lower in the head and we're striking it low, especially when I'm hitting up on it a lot, it's going to deflect slightly less, which is going to retain that launch, retain that ball speed, and manage to spin really well. Whereas the Qi35 has got CG maybe slightly higher up in the head. If we hit the strike point lower than the CG, it's going to deflect more. So therefore, it's going to reduce the launch and increase the spin, which is exactly what I found. Which is why I'm really enjoying doing 2 lots of data at the moment. It gives us like 2 different perspectives to really look at and analyze. And it goes to show that if you've got a specific strike, certain heads will be better for you than others depending on what you need. And it also goes to show that really watching these YouTube reviews and trying to link them back to what you do is probably pretty pointless and very, very difficult to do. This is why you have to come get fit, find out all of these delivery characteristics or strike characteristics, and therefore we link that to the head and shaft combo is going to work the best for you. So I hope you enjoyed that very data-driven, data-heavy, as always on this channel. I hope you're enjoying having Tom involved, giving you a slightly different swing speed, a different delivery. You know, it gives us 2 lots of data to analyze and show you guys so you can really sort of start to pinpoint the different head characteristics, what might be better and might be worse for you. Get fitted as always. But yes, I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, please subscribe. Stay tuned. We're going to be working really hard. Well, I'm working really hard to try and bring you guys more content, better content, more engaging content, informational content. So yeah, stay tuned. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.